So welcome, Clinton, from TradiePad. For those who don't know you, TradiePad was very kind to support the book launch for Profit First for Tradies. So we are very grateful and thankful for that. There we go. Beautiful. Australia Post finally got it to you. Some people, Perth, it was 3.5 weeks to get books there. Yeah. So
that's a long way.
Yeah, apparently so. I got a book to England in 10 days.
Wow.
But couldn't get one to the other side of Australia, but that's okay.
Must have been the borders, closed borders to us that caused the problem.
Yes, definitely. All right, so let's start off with, tell us a little bit about TradiePad, when you started it, why you started it, how long you've been going, and that sort of thing.
Cool. Well, to start with, thank you for having me, Katie. This is awesome. I love it when I get an opportunity to catch up with cool people and have a bit of a yarn. Oh, I've got a bit of Facebook in the background.
Yeah.
So cool. So TradiePad is it was a bit of a crazy idea that myself and my business partner Dave came up with years and years and years ago. We put so I'm a plumber. I was working in a plumbing business. We had 4 or 5 trucks at that stage, doing a lot of maintenance and service work, and some new homes for builders and kitchen renos and that kind of stuff. And Dave and I had always wanted to run the business more efficiently and electronically. And we looked at laptops and printers in the vans, and that wasn't really practical. And then the iPad was released, and I saw the iPad and thought, oh, maybe this is the thing we've been waiting for. It's portable. It's got a SIM card in it. It's mobile. It's everything we've been waiting for. So we got our hands on a couple of iPads, and I thought, oh, here we go. We'll be able to put MYOB on there and Excel and those kinds of things. And 10 years ago, it was 10 years ago. Can you believe that?
I was going to say, how long was that? I thought it'd be about 10 years ago.
It was 10 years. I've got a lot of grey hair in 10 years. You can't really see it, but it's definitely there. 10 years ago, those apps weren't on there. They weren't available. You couldn't put MyOB and Excel onto an iPad then. So I thought, we'll just have to use it to play Angry Birds or something. But then I started to look at the App Store, and I came across a few different apps. Came across Invoice to Go, which was really basic back then. It's come a long way in 10 years as well, but it was great because it let us do our quotes and invoices on the iPad. And then I set up a calendar system with Google Calendar, which let us schedule the workers to the jobs that they're going to. So that replaced our job cards and our invoice books and our diaries, and just got rid of a lot of the paper that was in the business. And it was a game changer. So I said to Dave one day, we could do this for other people. This has been awesome for the business. This technology is not going to go away. We could do this for other people. So I started to set it up for mates that were plumbers and sparkies around the northern beaches of Sydney. So set up a couple of mates, and they loved it, and it just rolled on and on and on from there. And then I discovered an app called GeoOp back then, which was one of the only job management systems that was really suitable for small business, and that led me to find Xero. And I found Xero and went, oh my God, this thing's amazing. Why would you use MyOb? So I found Xero, and I guess Xero was a really instrumental part of the whole development and evolution of TradiePad, because that Xero obviously focuses on the accounting side of things, but the integration that Xero has to other products is what's built this whole ecosystem of all of these things that we've got available now. So the receipt management apps and job management systems, and project management tools, and all these things. Is over 800 apps that connect into Xero now. Xero's kind of built this whole space, and that was how we got connected, Katie. We connected you're as a Xero partner, and we started working with a lot of bookkeepers and accountants because we don't do that stuff. But the apps and the software and integrating with Xero, it all kind of fits together, and we can all work together as a team to provide services to clients. So I'm kind of rambling here, but TradiePad kind of started as a bit of an idea to set up a similar system for other tradies that were mates of ours, but we're now a international clients all over Australia and New Zealand, where we're a training organisation. We're teaching tradies how to use technology, essentially. So we're not a software company. We don't have any apps or software of our own, but we work with a whole range of different job management systems and project management systems, and we're independent of them all, but we help a client understand how all these technology bits fit together, and then what system, what app, what job management system, what project management system is going to work for the specific business that we're working with. And then we can help get it all set up and train everybody how to use it. So I guess we kind of take a consultative approach first to understand what a business does and how they do it, provide guidance and education about all these things, and then provide a recommendation on what and I call it a platform, what the technology platform looks like, because it's not just one app. There's typically a whole number of components that'll fit together, and I'll talk about that later. But what the technology platform looks like, and then how to use it to its potential, because these things are absolute super weapons if you get them right. You gotta understand how to use them and get them right. So yeah, that's who we are, where we've come from, and now we take over the world.
Yes, awesome. So a couple of things I want to pick up on there that you've mentioned. So you talked about working as a team with accountants and bookkeepers and so on. So that's something that I talk about as well. Small business, we can't survive without creating a team that is there to help us achieve whatever it is we want to achieve. And I think that is something that I find is missing in a lot of, particularly in tradies, they still feel like they have to do it all themselves. And even just to change accountants or to get a bookkeeper is such a huge step for them. And one of the reasons why I like working with TradiePad is because it actually makes my job much easier from a profit first perspective, because we have more information, we have more data. And I always say, the more information we have, the better we can make our decisions, and we're no longer flying blind. So, and another thing you mentioned there was about, there's 800 odd different options. And what I love is that we don't have to know all those options. We don't have to know what's best for the business, because that's where you guys come in. Over 10 years, you would have worked with roughly how many clients, how many tradies over those years?
We're coming up to 2,000 businesses that we've consulted with in the initial assessment and recommendation, and implemented solutions into just about 800 of those. So you all pretty much of sizes and shapes.
And one thing I also find that as small business owners, and I also do this sometimes myself, we think we are unique, and we think that we are special, and we think that there's no other business like us. But when we actually get into it, whether it's bookkeeping, accounting, apps, profit first, we find that all businesses have a very similar, there's some very basics that we're all very similar. So if you've worked with over nearly 2,000 tradies, I would assume there's nothing that you haven't seen. There's no sort of variation. I suppose there's always some.
Yeah, I know you're right though. There are a lot of consistencies, and the I guess from the business management perspective, the concepts are similar. What varies though is people's levels of skill and requirements around what kind of information they want and the types of jobs that they do. And that's I guess that's why there are so many different software products that are out there these days, and it's not as simple as one size fits all. They're all there's awesome. They're all awesome pieces of software in their own right, and they all suit a particular type of business. But it's a matter of finding that right one that suits the way that you do work and the way that you operate your business and where you want your business to go in the future. That I guess becomes the challenging part. And I did a couple of scoping sessions yesterday with a couple of clients that were quite unique in the level of expectation that they had on what they wanted the software to do. And this is something I'm coming across quite regularly at the moment, is that people's expectations, like 10 years ago, when we were all on paper, it was like Invoice to Go was a life changer. You mean I can do my quotes and my invoices electronically? Wow. And I don't have to print them out, and I can email them. That's awesome. But now it's like expectations have accelerated past the capability of the software. So this is always a bit of a discussion point when we're doing a scoping session. It's to say, well, yeah, we're getting all this expectation around automation, like Receipt Bank and HubDoc are a great example of data extraction automation, of being able to pull the information off receipts and invoices and get it into the accounting package, get it into Xero automatically. But we're still waiting for that to happen en masse for the job and project management software. So people are just expecting that the software can do this stuff when we're still kind of waiting for that to happen and other things, other automation steps. So it's kind of bringing people's expectations in line with what's actually capable or what's possible at the moment.
And another thing you mentioned in there as well is around, as we said, all those different options. And what I find is I'm finding more and more people using various, say, job management systems. But now I ask the question, have you had any specific training, or have you even watched the training videos provided by that particular? And it's no. And I just remind them that it's a good idea, because quite often they come to me and they're complaining about the cost of that software. And obviously, Profit First wise, we're looking at making sure everything's most efficient and they're not wasting any money. So they're like, oh, that's costing me X amount of dollars a month. And when I sort of ask those questions, they haven't had any training, they haven't watched the videos, they're not using it properly, and therefore they've come to the conclusion that it's not the right product for them, which is where I'm like, no, get some training. You need to speak to the team at TradiePad, because as you say, these applications can just completely change their businesses around. Yet I find the clients that I talk to, there's that gap in that expectation of, they feel like they can just go and do it themselves and it's all going to be fabulous, and they don't need to put any more time or effort or invest any money towards it. So give us a bit of a case study of just a recent client who has, potentially not been using it or been using it not very well, and what that time frame looks like. Now, I know implementation timeframes are different for everybody, as you say, based on their skill and their, how enthused they are about it at the time and how important it is. Yeah. But what is a standard from having a chat to you and going through that whole process? What does that kind of look like for a tradie?
A typical project from go to woe, from initial scoping session through to going live, that's probably a good segment. Typical scoping session to going live can be as low as 3 to 4 weeks, depending on how quickly they act after the scoping session. So scoping session is a critical part of what we do. It's where we spend time one-on-one with the client to assess the business, talk about what they want to do and the future plans and structure and all that kind of stuff, and start to provide a bit of education about the technology and provide that recommendation on what the software or what the right system is going to look like. And then from there to actually going live with the recommended operational software, as we call it. So the operational software is the software that you use to run the day-to-day operations of the business, so the job management or the project management software. If all we're doing is setting up that operational software, that can typically be done in about 2 or 3 weeks to get to a point of going live. But then there's other pieces that fit in there around, like Xero, for example. If we've got a client that's using old desktop QuickBooks or Mile or something and they need to migrate to Xero, then there's a bit of time that's taken up there, and we typically suggest that should happen first, and then we'll focus on the operational software. Or there might be a bit of lag in making a decision and getting started. So minimum, I'd say 3 or 4 weeks, but typically a project would, from scoping session through to going live would be, I'd say probably more realistically 6 to 8 weeks, 2 months. Yeah. But with all of our projects, we're always providing a level of support after the go live as well. So we'll provide a couple of months of support and holding hands to work through the teething issues, and also provide a bit more ongoing guidance about the more advanced features. So a full project from go to woe is typically maybe 4 months to the point of saying, okay, now you're off on your own and you can do your own thing, or we might say, what do we do next? So yeah, typically it's a few months of evolution along the way with different milestones. But I guess that's the key thing. We're there to guide that process and support throughout that process rather than going it alone. Because I know what it's like. You're so busy in the business. Typically people are doing this because there's pain in the business. They're busy and they're not getting things done, or forgetting things or whatever. And when you're busy, it's so easy to be distracted and not prioritize the things that should be prioritized, because the phone rings and you get another job and you get a good opportunity. And if you do it yourself, it can take forever. It never gets done. But when you've got a partner, I guess like project manager, I suppose, like us, that's putting some structure around when things are going to happen and how it should happen, it happens. There's a clear structure and process around the actual implementation and that go live point. Does that make sense?
And that's what I think is important. It's that accountability. It's they've committed.
Yeah.
You do your best work. They have to provide that information back to you and meet those guidelines and those timeframes, because otherwise it doesn't get done. One thing I find when from the bookkeeping side of my business, when we move people over to Xero, I always tell them it's not just going to be smooth sailing when you change over. There's going to be that time where you are calling me all sorts of names because you're like, oh my God, why didn't I just stay where I was? It was much easier.
Go back to what we were doing before.
Yeah, but then there comes a point where I'll get an email or a text or something and they'll go, oh my goodness, you were right. I should have done this earlier. Or like there's that point where all of a sudden all that pain and change, the new habits fall into place, and it's just like this whole new world has opened up for them. And I would assume it would be probably even more so, particularly if they're in doing a job management system, because that can just free up so much time and everything. I would assume that they have the same sort of. And for me, I find that's a really fun part.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the rewarding piece. There's all that short-term pain for long-term gain. And we introduced a while back a couple of, I guess, checkpoints along the way where we'll get some feedback from the client. So we've got our trainers that do the implementation and the training work. But then myself at the moment, I'll do what we call a feedback call with the client after they've gone live with everything, after we've finished the training sessions and gone live. And typically there's a bit of pain that's happening there. There might be a few little teething issues or whatever, but that feedback call is an important point to say, okay, how's everything going? Is it working as expected? What else can we do to solve any issues? But then we also do a check-in call a couple of months later. And the check-in call is like, oh, wow, this is amazing. I've been able to take holidays. I can go and pick up my kids from school. I've got visibility of what's going on in the business. It's like the lights have gone on, like you're saying. And that's the cool part. I love the check-in call because you get to hear the raving about how good this is. Can't believe I haven't done it before. Yeah, I want to bottle that up and show it to people that are on the fence with, oh, should I do this? Do I keep doing what I've been doing before? Yeah, it's a matter of getting that enthusiasm and euphoria from people and showing, if you're thinking about technology, just do it, because look what happens.
And that's, I think, a key point. It's sometimes difficult to explain to those who are on the fence, or they can't see the end point. And as much as we can try to explain that to them and show them how we can do that, people have to be sort of ready to do it. But what I always say is to them, like, I get really excited when I'm talking to a new client about moving over to Xero. And I now say to people, I know I seem super excited and I might seem a little bit crazy lady, but I know what the outcome's going to be for you. Because at one point I had two client emails actually some time ago now, after I'd moved them over, and they were both along the lines of, I actually thought you were slightly mad, didn't think you'd be able to deliver on what you said, but holy shit, this is awesome. 2, very similar. And I went, oh, okay. And you would be the same. We are so passionate about what we do because we know what that end result is going to give the client. And I just say, if we could just bottle that up and somehow be able to get those people off the fence, it will just completely change their lives. And it's absolutely. I find it seems a bit silly to say that like an app or a program can change somebody's lives, but when we're doing it all day, every day, we see that time and time again, how much of a difference it does make to their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what drove me to start the business in the first place. I saw the impact and the benefit that happened to myself and my business partner in the time that we were saving. So I remember getting home from work one day, and I pulled the keys out of the van and I went, I've got no paperwork to do. I've done it all. I've done my quotes, I've done my invoices. Normally I'd be sitting at the kitchen table or the dining room table till 9 or 10 o'clock at night, doing all of this stuff. But I pulled the keys out and went, oh, that's it. I can spend time with the family. I can do whatever I want. And that was the point where I went, this is massive. This is going to change the way that tradies do business. So I saw the personal benefit to the business, but also we started to see a lot of feedback from our customers about the professionalism, about, oh, you're going to give me the quote now, or you're going to give me the invoice now, you're going to take payment. And we were showing up on time. We had a schedule, we had better communication with the clients. So we were getting this feedback from clients saying, well, I've never had a tradie that did any of this stuff before. So we could see the improvement in the professionalism of the business. And that's, that brings up the entire industry, because there's this, it's not so bad now, but back then there was this stigma around tradies that they're shit business people, they never show up, they never give you your documents, they never give you a quote. I had this tradie that didn't even give me an invoice, I still haven't paid him. And that's just, I think it's the lack of tools, the lack of relevant tools that we had to do that stuff. Whereas nowadays it's a different story. We can run our business off the phone. You can do all of that stuff from anywhere. So there's no excuses.
No, there's not. So for those tradies who may be using something at the moment, and when we're talking about job management systems, for example, so things like Tradify, SimPro, just run us through some of the examples of those, and then some of the examples of some other apps and programs that you would look at for clients, just so people know
I might show my screen for that.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, I might. And I'll just mention something, just going back to what we were talking about before, about people that are potentially not using the software to its potential. And so I think the software companies have done a really good job of making it easy to get started. ServiceMate's a great example. So ServiceMate is a great example of a really simple, really powerful piece of software that you can download from the App Store, get signed up, create a customer, create a job, do some scheduling, and off you go. It's really self-serve. You can connect it into Xero and it starts feeding information through. But it's got so much more to it. And like you said, watching the videos, and I think it's a bit of a tradie thing, read the instruction manual. I was always one of those guys that read the instructions. So I was always an instruction manual kind of person, which I guess, plays into why I'm doing what I do and knowing all these different things, these different pieces of technology. But spending the time to do that and learn a little bit is a really important part. You can't just think, oh, I'll just set it up and know everything about it. This is a whole new world for a lot of people. Technology is not something that tradies have had to use so much in the past. The rest of the business world's been using computers for decades, but we've been stuck with pen and paper. So spending a bit of time to invest in knowledge is really, really important. That's probably a mindset thing that people need to shift to just don't think that you're going to know everything about it and be able to use it to its potential without spending a bit of time, whether it's self-learning and watching videos or reading the help files or whatever, or engaging with a partner like us to do and help you through that. Either way, I don't care, as long as you invest the time to do it. That's the critical part. So let me show my screen, because I've got, I'll have a bit of a talk about, let me just share screens. I'll have a little bit talk about this platform that I mentioned before, because I could talk about apps for hours. You know, I could show apps and we could go through all sorts of different stuff and probably confuse the hell out of everybody, because there's so many things to know and so many things to take into consideration for a particular business. But I'll just talk about the framework, I suppose. Can you see my slide, the business technology platform?
Yes, we can.
Cool. So, and this might be old news for some people that have seen my presentations before and have dealt with this, but it's a really important framework to understand when you go into this, so that you're thinking the right way. You know, you can't just pick an app and think, oh, I'll just use that by itself. There's all these components that fit together to make up the technology platform, as we call it. So there's 4 bits. There's devices and network. There's communication and cloud storage. There's the financial software and operational software. So devices and network, pretty self-explanatory, but it's devices that you would use in the office, so laptops or desktops, as well as mobile devices. It's the mobile devices that's really revolutionized the way that we operate and the way that we as tradies and business owners can access and collect data. So the mobile devices is probably the key bit for us. Android versus Apple. It's Windows versus Apple. There's kind of a whole discussion around that stuff, and it's a lot to do with personal preference these days. And I kind of have that discussion with clients one-on-one. But there's a consideration around, if you've got workers, do you let them bring their own devices to work and leverage those, or do we provide devices that are company owned? If you do that, then there's some consideration around management of those devices. So if you do provide them with a work device, how are you going to manage that? You know, there are some tools that you can use called mobile device management, or MDM tools, that can manage how you put apps on the device and how you update things, and whether you can control them and wipe them remotely. So MDM becomes a really good management tool for managing those devices, that fleet of devices that you've got out there, whether they're phones or tablets. There's a bit of discussion about, do we work with phones? Do we work with tablets? But there's a few things to understand there to get the devices piece right. Then from there, we look at communication and cloud storage. This is typically email communication. So email is a bit of a bane of my existence and everybody's existence. It's not going away. Having a good business grade email platform is a real foundation. It doesn't matter what accounting package and what job management package you're using. You've got to have good business grade emails. So you're operating off a Hotmail or a Big Pond or a Gmail address doesn't cut it these days. Having a domain name, having business related email, and then being able to access that from anywhere, off a phone, off a tablet, off your computer, having it synchronized across all your devices, and most importantly, having it on the cloud means all of that communication's backed up as well. So Office 365 or G Suite are probably the 2 main players in the space. Zoho is starting to make a bit more of an appearance now as well, but it's kind of an all-in-one ecosystem, whereas G Suite and Microsoft Office 365 are great communication tools on their own, but will integrate with a whole bunch of other things as well. And they both incorporate other components. So it's not just mail management. There's calendars, there's contacts, there's document management, and there's cloud-based storage, which is a key part. So things like Dropbox or Box.com, or Microsoft has OneDrive, Google has Google Drive. So the idea of those tools is what you would traditionally put into a filing cabinet. You don't need that anymore. You can put it on the cloud. You can access it from any device. It's all backed up. And it's kind of, I guess, the storage point for any of those documents and files for the business. But then that leads us into talking about the operational software, because if you're using a job management system, then typically that job management system would store any of the job-related files and data. So typically the cloud storage would be used for business-related files, insurances and vehicle registrations and all that kind of stuff. Anything that's job-related would typically be stored in your job management system. Anything that's accounting related would be stored within your accounting software, Xero. So yeah, there's a bit of discussion around how that's structured, but again, having the right foundation in place for communication and cloud storage is really important. So then we get into the core, I call it, of the platform, which is the operational software and financial software. So financial software, pretty self-explanatory. It's Xero, or any of the cloud-based accounting packages. We love Xero because of the integrated nature of it and the ease of use. And Xero has been built on the cloud from day one. So accessibility from anywhere, easy to use, and it works with everything that we work with. All the job management systems and project management systems that we work with will integrate with Xero, whereas some of them integrate to Mob, some of them integrate to QuickBooks, but not all of them. So I've got a little slide here as well about some of the add-ons, the financial focused add-ons. I probably won't go into these in too much detail, Katie, because this could take a bit of time, but automated data extraction and payment tools and data management and reporting tools, there's a whole ecosystem of apps and add-ons that work with Xero that are financially focused. But I don't know that we've really got time to talk about that stuff today. This was the slide that I wanted to show, which is some of the apps that we work with. And I say some of the apps because it's certainly not all of them. And this is a constantly changing space. These are all amazing pieces of software, from something quite simple and entry level like ServiceMate up to an almost ERP or enterprise resource planning, like an enterprise level software like NextSphere, customizable tools like Connection. I guess the larger businesses doing projects and service work would be looking at Aeroflow or Simpro or Ascora. Up the top here, we've got builder focused tools like construction management software, as we call it, like BuildExact, MyConstruct. We've got WorkflowMax being used for some builders, BuilderTrend, there's CoConstruct, and then I guess the traditional tradie focused tools that we work with, like Tradify and Next Minute, ServiceMate, Fergus. The options are endless. So I could talk about these for hours. How deep do you want me to go on it, Katie?
Well, let's give us just give us an example of sort of your average, tradie, for example. Let's go plumber. Couple of guys with him, probably turning over, upward of $1 million-ish. If you've got one plumber, a couple of guys, what would this stack sort of look like for them?
It'd be a choice, I suppose, between a few of these. ServiceMate at a kind of entry point. Tradify would be a little bit more specific for trades, where it's tracking of time and tracking of costs. It's got purchase order capability and some basic project management capability as well. As does Fergus, as does Next Minute. So it's probably going to be a selection of these: Tradify, Next Minute, ServiceMate, Fergus. And if it's a larger business that needs more reporting, and maybe a few more guys and someone in the office that's able to drive the system, you'd probably step up more into the Aeroflow or Simpro or Ascora. But we've got sole traders that are using Ascora as well, that want specific functionality that Ascora has. So they've got forms built in, they've got customer asset management capability. So being able to set up, customers' hot water heaters or pump sets or, switchboards that you need to manage the details on and service those. So there's kind of all little things that each one of these does that is unique, that makes it applicable for a specific business. ServiceMate has some great automation and customer service focused functionality around automated SMS messages to your customers for booking reminders. They've got forms built in that are nice and easy to use and build. Got some basic asset management capability, but missing a couple of the key pieces for more of the, I guess, larger jobs or multi-visit or project style work. That's where you'd step up into Tradify. Tradify's added in some pretty cool stuff recently. They got Stripe built-in payment functionality with Stripe now, and and some communication automation to customers with messaging. But one of the key things at Tradify is if you're an owner-operator that's running the business from the field and you're on the tools, Tradify is great to let you create jobs, do all your scheduling on the fly, manage costing, so timesheets and materials, purchase orders, like I mentioned. So it lets you, if you're the business owner that's still on the tools, it's a great system that you can run the whole business basically off your iPad or off your tablet. Whereas some of these larger tools like Airflow and SimPro, you really got to have somebody in the office that's sitting at the laptop or desktop to drive the system, putting the jobs in, managing the scheduling, and then the guys in the field are really just doing the work. And saying that, you can manage SimPro and Airflow and some of the larger tools off a mobile device, but it's not really ideal for it. So there's, I guess, a whole bunch of questions that go into talking about these bits of functionality and what is really required for the business, and how it would actually work. Because a lot of these systems, they work in theory, but the practicality of how they operate and what's required sometimes doesn't work. So I did a catch up with a client this morning, and we were talking about the differences between ServiceMate and Tradify, because either could have worked for them. But one of the key things for them was the way that they're used to looking at their scheduler. They use a calendar system now, and they're used to looking at their scheduler and seeing all of the staff on the scheduler and being able to make appointments and move things around and see all the guys on one screen. And that was something that Tradify really, I guess, had over and above ServiceMate, was the way that the scheduler works and the usability and the user friendliness of it. So sometimes it's those little things that are the decision makers, I suppose, on which one's right and which one's not as right. Because I wouldn't say wrong.
Yes.
All of these things can work, but it's finding which one works the best and which one's going to be most suited now and into the future. That's a really big consideration of where the business is heading.
So that was going to be my question. For a business that is heading for growth, for example, they might be smaller now. Do you usually recommend that they plan for that growth, or take it, because the option what they choose now could be different to what is going to cover then? From a bookkeeping perspective, if I've got a new client who is small, but they tell me that they plan to grow the business over time, well, then I'm definitely going to put them straight onto zero. We're not going to mess around with anything else, because I always go by the theory, if you just do it right the first time, it's going to save you time down the track. So would that be the same for these sorts of options?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. However, it can, there's a bit of discussion around what that time frame looks like, because if you go to the extent of putting an Airflow or SimPro or maybe even a Scorer into a business that's not ready for it and can't really drive it properly, it can have a bit of a negative impact. You're spending all your time doing all this data entry and all of this admin work on the idea that eventually you're going to need the capability of the software. So we sometimes take a stepping stone approach as well to say, okay, well, let's get you set up on Tradify now, but with view to moving to another piece of software in the future, because that's not as hard as a lot of people expect it is. We've got plenty of businesses that we've moved from Tradify to a Scorer or Airflow or SimPro, or builders that have moved from Workflow Max to Buildertrend or Build Tools or the Builder Focus tools. So it's not as hard as people think it is. There's a little bit of pain, making a transition, learning a new system, but it's not that bad. It's a matter of what's the tool that's going to make the business as efficient and as professional and profitable now, so that you can grow, so that rather than putting constraints on the business by using a system that's too laborious now, that's going to restrict the growth. It's kind of a false economy, I suppose.
And that also brings us back to, there are so many options, And the most efficient way to figure out which is going to suit your business is to work with you guys, because
I would
be
like
able
to
to go
think so,
through,
yes.
you would go through that process, because I can imagine people who are watching or listening to this back going, oh my gosh, like there's so many options. We use ServiceMate. Should we be using Trade? Like, and would just get themselves even more confused about where they're at. And then we know when people are confused, we don't tend to not do anything. But working with you firstly for your scoping session, that's the first step, isn't it?
Yep.
And that's where you will go through a bunch of questions, figure out what they need, what they want, for you to be able to match the right solution to their system, to their needs. And also what I would find is, or what I know I find, because we have been doing what we do, we know the questions to ask from the information they provide. They quite often don't know the questions to ask us. But when you work with any sort of specialist, and I find this in my business when I hire a specialist to do something that I'm not great at, they, through experience and knowledge, know the questions to ask me to get the right answers, lead me to a much quicker solution than what I could do myself. So what may seem overwhelming, the step is have a chat, make that. We don't have to do everything all at once either, do we? We just have to, I always say, just take the first step. What's the first step?
Absolutely.
You're not committing to a 3-month implementation program at the first instance. You just, okay, we're going to have this chat. We're going to do this next
it's
step.
An assessment. Yep.
Yeah,
exactly right.
And you also mentioned that the different systems, like the different apps and programs and so on, do change. So again, by working with you guys, you are already on top of that. We don't need to know what's different there, what's changing here, or is that going to be a better solution for me? Which makes it much. I'm a big believer in making things efficient. Obviously, the bookkeeping side of my business is efficient trading. That's always been my main goal. But what I come to realize in my own business, that whilst I had, say, for example, a bit of a knowledge about these types of apps, it wasn't my specialty. And I actually am not efficient if I'm going to spend time trying to figure out which one, which is why it must have been 8 years ago that I came to Clinton for my brother, because he was a landscaper. And at that time I was in this space looking at these things, but I just went, actually, no, I'm going to go to you guys and it's just quicker and easier, just more efficient.
I've got this slide up around the process, and this is the first step. It's finding the best fit. And you've got, I guess, as a business owner, you've got the option, you do it yourself or you get someone to help you with it. So if you're going to do it yourself, to be able to make that decision on which one's the best fit, you have to have a deep knowledge of each of the different things to make the right educated decision. So that just comes down to time. The only way to get a good, deep understanding of how something works is to learn it. And that's what we've done over the 10 years that the business has been running, is learning all these different things, learning what they do, but most importantly, learning what they don't do. Because when you go and talk to a software company, they'll tell you all the stuff that they can do, but they don't tell you the stuff that they can't do. So the only way you find that out is through getting your hands dirty and actually implementing it. And that's what we've done over the years. You learn by doing. So we've implemented all these different things into people's businesses, and it's not until you've done that implementation that you learn to understand the limitations and the way what things can't do, because they don't all operate the same. You can't just make an assumption that if this one does it, the other ones must do it. It doesn't work like that. Functionality is different, integrations are different, the way that the app works is different. There's all these things to take into consideration. So you make the decision to either go down and invest all the time into, maybe picking 2 or 3 that are looking like a reasonable fit, and then getting in and knowing them intimately to then be able to make the right decision on which one's right and why is it right, or leverage a partner that's been doing this for years and can help guide you on that, which I think is the best use of time. It's like a specialist, like you said. You wouldn't go to a GP and expect that the GP would be able to do everything. You get specialists involved to do their specific things. And then from there, we've got implementation. So it ties in with what I was talking about before of learning it and implementing it into the business properly. And that's, it's, I guess, from an admin side of things, getting the setup right, getting the configuration right, getting the integrations, but also training for your team. If you've got staff, you can't just say to them, install the app from the app store and here's your login and off you go. You've got to dedicate a bit of time and a bit of guidance to say, here's why we're doing it, here's how we're going to do it, and here's the benefit. So that everybody's on the same page and everyone's got the knowledge that they need to be able to do it. So many clients have come to us and said, oh, we tried to set up Service Mate and it didn't work. The guy didn't want to do it. And it's like, well, you maybe could have executed that a little bit better. So
I hear that often as well.
Is massive.
Yeah, and I remind them that it's their business and that it's their money that is going down the drain because their staff member doesn't want to come on board. We need to flip that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's got to be benefit, from the staff member's perspective. What's the benefit? You got to give them a reason for wanting to do this. There's a bit of novelty value generally with, I'm running the jobs off my phone or whatever, but it needs to be better than what they were doing before. Otherwise, they'll go back to what they were doing before. They'll be resistant. So you got to frame it the right way and have the right reasoning around it. But this last step is what made me show this slide. This last step is really key you can't just expect, we set it up and that's it, it's done. There's ongoing changes to the software. It's the nature of cloud-based software. It's changing all the time. Some change faster than others, but there's constant evolution going on with the technology, whether it's devices or it's the software or it's integrations or other tools that can work in with the software that you've chosen. There's an ongoing commitment to learning and understanding and supporting. And I guess this is a service that we provide as a support partner. We position ourselves kind of like an IT department for tradies. So if there's a problem with your device, or if your email's not working, or if there's you want to add another side into the business or whatever, we provide that support, that ongoing support, if necessary. But even if you don't use a third party and a specialist like us, you have to, as a business owner, commit to the ongoing maintenance and ongoing knowledge of your software and of your system, the platform, to make sure it's operating to its potential, because it's really easy for it to go stagnant and you're not using it to its potential. That's really key. And
also their business could change as well.
Yeah.
And if they don't, which happens all the time, and if they don't have that, that team to fall back on to say, hey, this is where we're headed now, does this still fit, or do we need to look at another solution? It's that constant evolution, because everything is moving so quickly. We want to make sure that we keep on top of it all. So they can have their scoping session, you can do the implementation, and then they can have ongoing support as well.
Yeah, it's it. Lots to think about.
Well, that is awesome. And it's certainly been a while since I have refreshed my knowledge, I guess, on this whole process as well. So, I had forgotten how complex it can be. But I know you guys make it so as simple as it can be as well. So
yeah, absolutely. I'll go back to this slide. This is a constantly moving thing for me as well, and for our team. It's keeping up with all of these different things and new products and what they do. Like Build Tools is a construction. It's a builders focused software out of the US that's been around for a little bit of time. I've been watching it, but they're kind of really getting to a good point now and really competing well with Buildertrend and Co-Construct. So it's keeping up with all of these things, and you can't, I guess a lot of people look at a piece of software and go, oh, that's not going to work for me because it's, it doesn't do X, Y, and Z. But you come back in 2 months' time and look at it and it might do that. So it's I guess, constantly being in touch with the changes that are going on in the space. And that's the challenging part from my side. We're talking about, where do we draw the line? Which software products do we work with and which ones do we not work with? And it comes down to what we call best of breed. There's a certain number of things that we look at on how the software's been written and what the backup of the software looks like, or what the infrastructure looks like, what the longevity of the software company looks like, and obviously the functionality and how it works. But there's a whole bunch of things that go into assessing best of breed products, because there's an absolute minefield out there. You Google job management software, and it's
the list is endless.
It really is. A lot of stuff coming out of the US, as well as, there's a lot of American software that is okay, but it's not really suited to the Australian market. And they might have integrations to QuickBooks, but not to Xero. So it can be a massive time sponge. I love it. I love looking at all the different bits of software, and that's my job, I suppose. I'm full time on that side of things now. Whereas if you're a business owner and you're trying to run a business and do this stuff, I don't think it's good use of your time.
Well, that's a perfect example. So before I had my children, I was a financial planner. So I sat with clients all day, every day, and walked them through a financial plan that I thought would suit them. So whether it be investment or for superannuation, retirement, and so on. And I would always get the question, do you invest in shares yourself? And I would, no. Whilst I was doing it, I didn't have the time to know all the information about each individual company. That's what the fund managers would do. They had a team, and that was their job, just like you, to assess all of these. So even though I was in that space, I still didn't think I had enough information to be able to make those decisions. And I feel like that has just carried through since I've started my business and so on. That's what I just look at. Yes, I've got some knowledge, but I don't have the time to have enough knowledge to make those decisions that I know will be best for my business, which is why I have always worked with specialists in various parts of my business. But also another thing, when you mentioned before about, tradies having specific software, and if they're trying to do it themselves, for example, as opposed to somebody who has worked with you, the person who has worked with you is going to be able to move and adapt much quicker in the market as to somebody who's investing all their time in trying to figure out the best solution. So I would think that person who has worked with the specialist has more time to do, for example, marketing. And therefore, their business is going to grow, if that's what their goal is, at a quicker pace than somebody who is trying to do all this work themselves, just simply because they have more time to invest in chatting to people, ringing clients up, doing all that sort of thing. So, and I think that's something that, and I know I have done with my own business early on in the piece, thinking I could do everything myself. And then I had to realize, what is it actually costing me, apart from my time, to investigate whatever it was I was looking at in the marketplace. And that's when I realized other businesses are just going to keep skipping ahead and taking all the good clients because I'm head down figuring out another option. And that for me was when I really sort of just decided, now I'm like, unless I love it and it's my specialty, I outsource it.
It's an opportunity cost, as they call it.
Absolutely. And I think that's one that we don't think about enough. And it's something I certainly talk about with my clients when we're doing Profit First. It's yes, you could do that, or you could have somebody else do that. And what is that opportunity cost? What is it actually costing you in that time, and so on and so forth. So that is why I have always, as I said, I'm always a big believer in finding the specialist for that space and working with them, because that is going to give you your best, most efficient outcome for you and your business. So, well, we are a few minutes off 11. Is there anything that I have missed asking you and you want to let us know?
No, I think that's a lot of information for people to take in. I guess the decision now is for those that haven't that haven't made a decision or are new to technology, you know, we're here for a scoping session. But even those that have made a decision on a product and are not 100% sure if it's quite right or if you're getting the most out of it, we help clients like that as well. We do for a lot of clients, we do what we call a discovery, where if you're using Tradify or using ServiceMate or using one of these tools, we'll do a discovery session with you to look at how you're using it and what the requirements are and whether you're using it to its potential, you know, and whether you can get a bit more out of it. And that's it's similar to a scoping session. So it's a couple of hours online going through a bit of discussion and assessment. We use Zoom meeting for a lot of our online meetings. So even if you have made a decision, but you're not 100% certain whether it's quite right or if you're using it to its potential, that's something we can help with as well. But it is it's a simple starting point. It's not a big commitment like a 3-month project, like you said. You know, we've got these low cost, low commitment starting points to just start the conversation. You know, it's just starting somewhere, and we provide a bit of guidance around, okay, well, what do we do next? So if anyone is interested in knowing a little bit more, I don't know if there's any questions that are coming through on Facebook. I haven't got the Facebook live stream open, but Q&A if there are any questions. But if you are interested in knowing a bit more, if you text your name through to the number that's on the screen and mention Profit First, and we'll make sure you get a special deal as well for anything that we do for you as a bit of a thank you and a bit of a recognition for all the Profit First members, the group. Any questions there, Katie?
So there was just one from Steve around tracking hours for a team of 5. But what I might do is, that's a bit of a general question you could probably briefly answer, but also Clinton is part of the group as well. So if there's any questions in there, he can always pop in and help.
I'll respond to Steve on that message, because there's a few things to outline there. Yeah. So bang on time.
Perfect. Spot on. Well, thank you very much. As I said, I've learned a lot more than I learned a lot that I didn't realise that I didn't know, and I thought I knew a bit in this space. So thank you very much. As I said, it is in the group, and you'll be able to go and watch the replay if there's parts of this that you want to go back and check out. And as I said, Clinton's in the group, so feel free to ask him any questions, and we can, just take the first step. Just make that one step and go from there. You don't have to do everything by tomorrow. But just take that one step. So,
and know that there's people to help you with it as well. That's the key.
Yes, that's right. Thank you very much, Clinton. It has been a pleasure. And we'll see you in the group.
Thank you, Katie. Have a good weekend.
No worries. You too. Bye.